Gentlemen, thank you both for your service to our nation and for being willing to answer the call to serve once again. Thank you in particular to your wonderful spouses and all they've done to enable your service and the example they've set for our military spouses in both the Navy and the Marine Corps. Admiral Moran, I want to talk a little bit about the Truman. We've already explored this with Secretary Spencer and Admiral Richardson, but the budget request obviously proposes not to conduct the midlife refueling of the Truman. So that means that we'll be down a carrier for about 25 years up until, I think, the late 2040s until we build that out. So that gets us below our requirement of 12 carriers. I just want to get your thoughts on this decision and the extent to which it reflects some new strategic thinking about the way we fight joint war, to the extent it reflects the constrained budget that the Navy has had for several years because of the Congress.
Senator, I think you captured both of them in your question. There is a strategic shift in how we are approaching the way we fight. It's called distributed maritime operations. In a nutshell, in a simple way, think about just spreading the offense out over a greater playing field in order to have multiple attack threat vectors to adversaries that would want to challenge us at sea. So to do that, we believe we're going to need to modernize our force in a way that we haven't thought of in the past, especially in the unmanned arena. We certainly have seen the benefit of unmanned aviation over the last 17 years of combat. We clearly believe that unmanned undersea and unmanned surface will help us expand those threat vectors in the future at a lower cost because of the requirement not to man them. So in order to do that, we needed to find money because we felt like we needed to move this time around on this budget. We needed to go find the money to be able to do modernization, experimentation, prototyping, R&D for the things that we should be delivering in the next 5 to 10 years. Truman is a big bill in the FYDP, and by looking at that as a way to offset these requirements and investments that we wanted to make, that's where this decision came from.
Congress may not be good at many things, but one thing it is good at is finding money. If the Congress found money to both refuel the Truman and continue on the new Ford-class carrier program, I assume that's not something the Navy would decline. Is that correct?
Well, sir, we wouldn't decline more money, but to the earlier question about CR and sequestration, we have a mindful eye that that's on the horizon, and even if you added money, I think we would have to be very careful about how that money was allocated.
Well, that's a bigger question. I hope we don't get there, but we will burn that bridge when we get to it.
Yes, sir.
I want to talk to you both of you about pilot retention. This is an issue on which I have focused in the Air Force. We've seen some of the same issues in the Navy and the Marine Corps now. I'd just like to hear from you what we're doing to retain these pilots after we spend so much time and money in training them. General Berger, you want to start with Marine Corps efforts?
On the front end, Senator, recruiting always has been a focus. I think now even more so, not specifically the numbers, but more looking to, we may lengthen the time of service that their initial obligation is so that we can train and then get the benefit on the back end, because like you mentioned, their pipeline for training is longer than it was 10 years ago. On the retention side, very targeted bonuses, incentives for them to stay. I think there is no question within the Marine Corps, we know the competition from the airlines is here now, and it's not going to go away in a year. The third part, though, Senators, the readiness improvement in our platforms is critical in retention, because pilots come in to fly, and if we can't give them but 6 or 7 or 8 hours a month, after a while, that gets really frustrating. The recovered readiness, in other words, on our aviation platforms is huge. The more they fly, the happier they are, better we are as a service. So we have to keep readiness high. It's directly related to retention.
Senator, I completely agree with General Berger, especially on the last point. There's nothing more disincentivizing to an aviator than not being able to fly. And it's more than that. It's having to go through 2 or 3 airplanes on a pre-flight just to get one that will fly. And that's where we were several years ago. And thanks to this Congress and the RAA in 17 and the continued funding, steady stream, we've been able to recover there in many areas. We've still got a ways to go, but that is the #1 disincentive for our aviators from all platforms, all type model series. But all of the other avenues that General Berger related to in terms of bonus authority, recruiting, those sorts of things are being actively pursued, and we got plenty of authority from Congress to be able to execute that.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. This is actually one case where I think throwing a lot of money at the problem won't make a difference. Those bonuses are nice. We should reward our service members, especially in the most skilled positions. But General Berger, as you said, you're never going to be able to pay as much money as an airline. And your young pilots joined the Marine Corps and the Navy to fly high-performance aircraft against bad guys in defense of our nation, not to make a little bit more money, even though that's welcome. And I bet Lieutenant Moran might not have stuck around to be Admiral Moran if he only got 4 or 5 hours of flight time a month and was only spending the rest of his time making PowerPoint slides. So I'm glad to hear that you recognize that part of making sure that we retain the world's best pilots in the Navy and the Marine Corps. Thank you, gentlemen.